Okay, we have seen last time what is locality sensitive hashing. So can anybody describe what is locality sensitive hashing? What is the basic idea in locality sensitive hashing? Similar sets will fall into same buckets.
We first separate out the non-similar sets, sets which do not fall under the same buckets, and we only take care of the sets which fall under the same buckets. That's how we reduce the processing and complexity.
The conceptual idea is this, right? When we hash, then similar sets fall into the same buckets. There may be false positives also. They may not be similar, but they will fall into the same. But if they are dissimilar, they never fall into the same bucket, right? That is the concept, right? Which we are using hashing here to separate out which pairs we need to evaluate whether they are similar or not. So that is the basic idea. Now, where will we use this idea? We'll see some of the applications now. One is the entity resolution. The entity resolution problem is to examine a collection of records and determine which refer to the same entity. So if somebody stores the MSIT students database, suppose, then it has started 20 years back, then 20 years database you have, means MSIT office may have 20 years database, but different people might have taken to build that database. If there is no proper format, then they might have stored student, let's say alumni student records in a different fashion, name and all those things, right? And if they collect 2 times, if they lost something and they collect, and if they got 2 sets of alumni records, then if they are not stored in the same fashion, then how do they find the duplicates? Means which are the similar items, similar records they can discard, something like that. It's the entity resolution problem is to examine a collection of records, a collection, whatever it is, records of people, records of whatever that it's the organizations, and determine which refer to the same entity. So what problems will have it? Somebody might have written simply the full name or with initials. Even then that will refer to the same entity, right? And sometimes in usage, the name will be written in 2 different ways. Then also they should be able to find out by looking at other fields there. So entities means could be people, events, etc. Typically, we want to merge records if their values in corresponding fields are similar. Okay, did you understand what is this problem? Because applications are important in data science. From this, we should be able to apply this type of, let's say, solution or thinking for some other problems. Nobody will come to a data scientist with a defined problem, remember. If it is a defined problem, they don't need a data scientist. They will just go for a machine learning engineer or somebody else. So we actually need to understand the problem, design the solution. And even if they don't know that how do we improve their business, we should be ready there to improve their business without getting ideas from them. If they have idea, it's say you tell me the classification, I have this data, this is the classes, then it is easy. We don't need there actually as a data scientist. So understanding these problems, how this data will be useful to solve their problems, how we use data, that is important for us. So did you understand this problem? This problem is finding similar records, right? Okay. So the author is explaining here, he got one problem. What is that problem? I once took a consulting job solving the following problem. Company A agreed to solicit customers for company B for a fee. So company A may be some service company. So they took a marketing company B So those marketing company will get customers for company A. Then for each customer, A should pay some fee to B. Okay, they will also charge the customer, but this is the marketing person because he should get some commission as a fee from A. Understand this problem? They then argued over how many customers. Ultimately, B should get some money, right, from A. Then B says that I have provided 2,000 customers, but A says that no, you haven't provided 2,000, you provided only 1,000, something like that. Then they argued over how many customers. Why do they argue for how many customers? Because B will get more money, or B will get money based on how many customers he provided. So you want more particular, right? B.
Yes.
So neither recorded exactly which customers were involved. That is marketing company. Then they, as people are getting through their marketing, they are sending. So this happened after a while. This B says that we have provided these many customers. Then A says that no, you haven't provided that many. That is the argument. Now, what is the solution for this? Then they need to establish that exactly how many customers B provided. There may be some duplicates B is maintaining, right?
Yes.
So that is the problem. So you need to find out entities with entities which are same entities. There might be different records because they haven't recorded. Then they need to now cooking up those records, right?
Yes.
So now we need to find out which records will refer to the same entity. Then B may say that 1,000 customers, but A will say that yes, we might have received a request from 1,000 from your side, but actually the same you referred twice, you referred thrice. So it becomes 1,000 minus 3, something like that. Okay. If you can find which records will refer the same, then you can reduce that many, right? A can reduce that many. So they need to establish that the references which you sent, there were duplicates or there were entries which are referring to the same. That is the problem now. Now, when it comes to the size of the data, size of the records, all those things, then it becomes a big problem. How do you verify that? It's which two records are same, are referring to the same entity. Each company had about 1 million records describing customers that might have been sent from A to B. So around A has 1 million records, B also has 1 million records. Then now in that 1 million records, even in A, you need to find out what are the similar what are the records referring to the same entity, and B also you should, right? Then only this problem will be solved. Records, those records had name, address, and phone, but for various reasons, they could be different for the same person. Why phone will be different for the same person?
Probably more than one.
Yeah, one is if they hold 2 phone numbers, then they may give 1 phone number at a time. The same customer might have come back to the B, then B is referring, but that by that time either you may got second phone number, or you may lost the first one, or you may not be using the first one. You might have changed it to some other provider. Now it is porting is there. Earlier porting was not there, right? If they lose the phone, then they lose the phone. Or if they change to some other provider, the phone number will change. So it is natural that where phone numbers will change. So address also will change, right? By the time. People may change their address, or they may move to some other place where earlier they were staying. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Is there possibility that name will be in 2 different ways?
First name, last name, first name.
Yeah, the order might be changed, or they might have put more initials instead of extending those initials. All those things will come, right?
Yes, sir.
Or the Addressing also may change. By that time, it's if somebody finished PhD, then doctor might have come. Earlier, it is not there. Or if they are studying something engineering, then engineer may come. The medical doc. So those titles also will change. And as you said, it's initials. Sometimes there might be some spell mistakes also. The first time they might have they might have put correct entry. When they are referring the same entity second time, if there is spell mistakes, then they don't look like alike, right? So those are the problems will happen for this, let's say. But agreement is if the same customer referred, then A will not pay. Then he has to establish that already you referred that person, okay? Then only A will cut down the number of what B is claiming. Then how do you do this? Any ideas?
Maybe group by one unique.
Then group by one unique, if you say spell mistakes, will it catch? They fall into
No,
different
sir.
buckets, right? Group by
Again, different.
spell mistakes will not be caught, right? In that case.
Yes, sir.
Then, or even if you have initials and extending those initials in some other, that also will not be caught if you do simply group by name, suppose. Phone numbers are different. You cannot just group by phone, right? So even if you leave out one field, or if you take only one field, there are problems that there is more chance that one field may differ, but differing all the fields are very less, right?
Yes,
When
sir.
you are referring the same entity, you may do spell mistakes in one field. If you do spell mistake in all fields, then nobody can catch, right? If you completely, that will become a different entity. Name is different, address is different, phone is different. Nothing is common between them. So probability is there much. One field may differ than all the fields differing, if that is denoting to the same entity. So how do you do now this? So that we'll see ideas. Step 1, design a measure of how similar records are. Anyway, later you will verify by getting more details. If address is same and name is same, then at least first, these are the potential same records, right? Referring to the same entity. You may not say that they are referring to the same entity because one field is varying, but you can do other proofs. You can call that phone number, two different phone numbers, and ask the customer or verify the customer, are they same? You agree with what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. That is one idea.
So you will reduce the number of proofs right there. Otherwise, you need to see each two pairs whether they are referring the same or not. So if you can say that some fields are matching, one or two fields are missing, then you can ask them, what is your full name, what is your actual spelling, then you can see that. Design measure of how similar records are. Deduct points for small misspellings. Jeffrey and Jeffrey are same phone with a different area code. So area code might have been changed. At that time, landlines have different area codes because STD has a different thing. You might not have that experience. Earlier, STD codes were there for different areas. So based on that STD code, then whatever telephone comes first STD, that area it should go. Score all pairs of records that the LSH scheme identified as candidates report high scores as matches. So we will use locality sensitive hashing. So that will bring us, if they have some commonality, LSH, what we did at the end, we are not looking, all the signature is same, right? What did we do in LSH? Did we check for whether the complete signature is same between two documents? To say that or to explore further, they are similar or not?
We had a threshold.
So we took bands, right? Even in one band, it is same. They will fall into the same group, same bucket. Do you remember bands we made for signature? So at least some part should be same between them, then they will fall into the same bucket. If no band is same to other band in other record, then they won't fall into the same bucket, right? If name differs with the name here, phone differs with phone, address differs with address. If we hash them by using locality sensor, some hash function, min hashing that is called, do they fall into the same bucket? Very unlikely, right? Because hash may take different, because different strings may have the same hash value, but most unlikely they fall into the same bucket. If they are falling into the different buckets, we are sure that they are not same, right? Okay, that is the idea. Here also we will use. So here we will get a score based on, let's see, if address matches, then this much of score. If phone matches, this much of score. If name matches, this much score, like that, let's say. So then according to that score, we will see that we will design some hash functions. So at least one field, in this case it is simple, if at least one field matches, they will fall into the same bucket. If no field matches, then they will fall into different buckets. At least we can eliminate them. We are talking about million rows, remember. We are not talking about simple things. There it is easy for us to verify or sort by name, then see that it says sort by phone, all those things. Your sorting also will not happen in your system if you have 1 billion rows. Okay.
Yes, sir.
That is one more method. Simply sort by name, then you will get all similar names will come together, right? Then at least you can take same name people. So if name is not matching, you will see whether phone numbers are matching. If phone number is not matching, you will see address is matching. That custom sort, whatever that filtering you can put and do that. See, that is another way of if you have a less data. But if you have a huge data, then even whether to verify all or not is a big problem. That's why we are going into this hashing level of solution. So score all pairs of records that the LSH schema identified as candidates, report high scores as matches. Then again, it's later on people, a person from A and B sit together and where you are getting conflicting. B says these are two different records. A establish that it's a phone number is same, address is same. Let us find out calling by phone, his name is same or not, as we wrote in different ways. Okay. So that is what happens. If we only thing is here, what we reduce it, the number of probes, which two records refer the same entity. That probe is reduced, okay? The number of probes we do. So problem 1 million square is too many pairs of records to score. Why is talking about 1 million score, 1 million square?
Each record with every other record is 1 million.
So if you want to see which two records are same, then we need to verify 1 million square, right? NC2. Of course, by 2 will come, but in complexity, 1 million square. Okay. That many pairs you need to verify. Solution is simple LSH, 3 hash functions, exact values of name, address, and phone. Compare if and only if records are identical in at least one. Misses similar records with a small differences in all 3 fields. This solution will work. So at least one field should be same for us to be probe further. But this solution is not complete solution because the last point says what? What is the last point he's saying?
Misses similar records with small differences. Might be spelling mistakes. I think.
Yes, spelling mistake or phone area code might be changed. Earlier, we were writing +91. Somebody will write it is India, write simply 0, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
So like that, those small differences still we cannot catch. But how many such things will come? It's when we are dealing with big data, then again, we need to see how much of damage it will happen, right? At least they will come to close. 10, 15 records will go like this. It's okay. It's that is something like overhead they may pay, or it is not views loss for A or views loss for B. Whoever agrees that okay, 10 or more or 10 or less. So, but there is small chance that similar records with a small differences in all three fields will be missed by this. How do we hash strings such as names? So there is one bucket for each string. So this is, if you don't want to use locality sensitive hashing, then you can also use it. See, just now I discussed about outside of the locality sensitive hashing. How do we hash strings such as names? So there is one bucket for each string. Answer, sort the strings instead. So you can sort the strings, but sorting complexity is how much? N log n if you use the best sort, right?
Yes.
So that is also views number. If you have 1 billion, so 1 billion log maybe something like 1024, I don't know. Actually, we need to compute, but that many times of the billion. See, time complexity will not work when it is massive data set. We have seen that it's if 2 vectors, if you need to take, then 4 billion memory you may have in your system, but for 2 vectors, 8 million, because the memory is also important, right? Here, not only the time. So each thing will become a difficult task when we are dealing with massive data sets, not only just time complexity. So n log n, if that becomes bigger, it is log n, but it's that many times of the memory, all those things you require. That is also a problem. So we should not simply see that it's okay, complexity is n log n, so it is much better than the n square. It is much better than the n square, but when it comes, implementing n may be easy instead of the implementing n log n. For n log n, your memory may not be sufficient. Another option was to use a few million buckets and deal with buckets that contain several different strings. So one way of to get the address, suppose address is a big string. If they miss house number, something misspelled or might have changed, whatever that is. So the area may not change sometimes. So then you can use your shingles, all those things. Shingles advantage is what? When 1 or 2 letters change by mistake, what will happen with when you take the shingles?
Even if 1 or 2 letters or 1 or 2 words are exchanged,
right,
there won't be much difference.
So not many shingles will change, right? When you make them, when you create shingles out of that string. So those techniques you can use. Then again, you can bucket them. Then if largely, if both addresses have the same letters, they will come together, okay? That is also in a sequential way. Shingles follow sequential, right? They won't take a first letter from first word, second letter from second, all those things, let's say. We are contiguous letters we are taking. So that is one more way. So instead of to catch that misspelling also, you can use the shingles, then do min hashing, see that which are falling into the same bucket. Again, you need to prove. If they fall into the same bucket, there is no guarantee that they are similar. There is more likely chance that they may become similar. After proving only, we will decide. So how do we validate these results? Okay, we use LSH or these other methods, sorting and same names, or sorting by phone number, same. So all those things we apply and we get records. Then how do results? How do we evaluate those results? We were able to tell what values of the scoring function were reliable in an interesting way. Identical records had a creation date difference of 10 days. we only looked for records created within 90 days of each other. So bogus matches had a 45-day average. So one way of you can use other techniques also. What are the bogus records? What are not bogus records? So identical records had a creation date difference of 10 days. We only looked for records created within 90 days of each other. So bogus matches had a 45-day average. So one way, this is not so clear, but what I understood from this is, you can also see that it's whenever a customer is referred, he will be serviced within 10 days. That is the normal average. For bogus records or whatever you are finding these duplicate records or same record with the same refer to the same entity, then if you find a discrepancy like the referring date and the service completed is 45-day average, then that is one point you can say that you see all these people were served in 10 days. But for these records, you are saying that you referred, but the service is happening or showing that it is serviced after 45 days. Means what happened, they might have entered the same records, right? With a back date. You understand this point? So usually in 10 days, the service will be finished by A. Then if they want to show that, and they found for some records, the service is 45-day average, whatever that it's for duplicate matches. Then what might have happened, you can think. The question comes that why did we serve these people late, right? When we are serving, our average time is 10 days. Then why did we serve these people after 45 days? Either you might have created with a back date that it's same customer 45 days before. Service date is same there, but the creation date is different. That is one way to catch. It's a different techniques you can use later when you analyze the results. The discrepancies you can find these are having same service date, but different creation date or referred date. Then there is some problem because you see all the other customers, they are getting served in within 10 days, but these, the same, same entry is there for the same record with the little differences. That is also served in 10. With the little differences, another one is coming with 45 days, no service happened, whatever that it's. So those are backdated, same thing. Some might have bogusly created same customers with a backdate. So we were able to tell what values of the scoring function were reliable in an interesting way. That is what he says. He started this whole problem he got as a consultant, right? Identical records had a creation date difference of 10 days. We only looked for records created within 90 days of each other. So bogus matches had a 45-day average. So another way of looking is by looking at the pool of matches with a fixed score, we could compute the average time difference, say X, and deduce that fraction 45 minus X by 35 of them were valid matches. So again, they are using some probabilistic theory. Then how many maybe bogus matches they are trying to compute through statistics. By looking at the pool of matches with a fixed score, we could compute the average time difference, say X. If there is only average time difference X, and deduce that fraction 45 minus X by 35 of them were valid matches. So last, the lawyers didn't think the jury would understand. Okay, say all this happened. When it goes to the court, all these probabilities, statistics, these locality sensitive hashing, all those things they might not have understood, right? The judges. That is what he's making joke here. Lawyers didn't think that they need to make this presentation in a different way so that anybody without having knowledge of the probability statistics or data science knowledge or this locality sensitive hashing, all those things, they should be able to understand. That is what he says, that it's don't take it to the common people or normal people who doesn't understand all these techniques to explain. So you need to find out in a different way to make them to understand what we are doing. So any field not used in the LSH could have been used to validate. That is another way. So you may hold off one or two fields, then different remaining fields you take, you verify whether other fields are also same, which are not used to hash. Any field not used in the LSH could have been used to validate, provided corresponding values were closer for true matches than false. Example, if records had a height field, we would expect true matches to be close, false matches to have the average difference for random people. So if average difference between random people is very small, then it's a duplicate recorded people height. Then again, you can say that if records had a height field, we would expect true matches to be close, false matches to have the average difference for random people. So you may find the discrepancies between duplicate records and real records. And real records, average difference is small. When duplicate records, because they created by human, right? They wanted to put a high because they want to show the differences between the earlier customer and new customer, whatever they are referring the same entity. They might have inflated that height. So that is one way to find out. You see, all the records in general, if I take, their average difference is this. For whom I am claiming these are bogus records, then for those bogus records, the average height is varying completely different. Here maybe 2 inches is, then you are getting 5-6 inches difference between those bogus records. Then you may say that something is happening. We need to prove these records, whether they are real or not. So this is one way of entity resolution thing. How this locality sensitive is LSHS can be applied. So it is simple. The idea LSH, if we use good min-hash functions, similar records will fall into the same bucket and dissimilar records will fall into different buckets. But there are also false positives. That's why we cannot straight away take which are falling into the same bucket as similar things. Again, we need to probe them whether they are really similar or not by using the external criteria in the case of the entity resolution. In the case of the simple document similarity, we will just compute how much similar they are, and we will report that between these space, the similarity is this much. Is there any questions on this? Okay, then we'll move to the other thing. Fingerprint matching is another application. Represent a fingerprint by the set of positions of minutiae. So what they do is, usually if they take an image and they will make the same size, then they try to find out, they will divide into different positions, means a grid. So on this grid, where the light is there, not light is there, or if light is there, it is white. If not light is there, then it is black, right? Whether that there is black or white, something they do that. So represent a fingerprint by the set of positions of minutiae. Then you can write it, see, if you divide into some 1000 by 1000 grids, but small one, then in 1000 grids, how many places you see the black ink, whatever that that. So that is one way of representing, instead of the representing as an image. So these are features of fingerprint, example points where two ridges come together or a ridge ends. Then they are also getting more sophisticated. So these are features of a fingerprint, example points where two ridges come together, means their fingerprint is, many lines type of thing will be there, right, on finger. then whether two ridges are coming together or they are ending there in that particular position. So those things will represent by minutiae. So place a grid on a fingerprint, normalize so identical print will overlap. Normalize is nothing but get the same sizes. So if one is 3 by 3, other one also you make 3 by 3, that extend that. Then normalize so identical prints will overlap. Set of grid squares where minutiae are located represents the fingerprint. So you'll get some values for each point. Point means in the grid, on a grid, you'll get a point, 0 or 1s, most naturally. 0 means there is some line joining whatever that it says. He says that ridge ends or ridge come together. So possibly treat minutiae near a grid boundary as if also present in adjacent grid points. So possibly treat minutiae near a grid boundary as if also present in adjacent grid points. Okay, he's saying that it's if nearby points has this the boundaries you can extend little bit. It's even if it is not there, the boundary level, let's say, might have printed correctly or not that fingerprint. You can boundaries. You can say that it's if all its boundaries is having that value. You can also put the middle value also the same value. So minutiae located here. See, this is your lines are coinciding here. So why are they putting minutiae? Remaining places, there is no coincidence, right? Of two lines are coming together, right? Here. They are only taking the grids where two lines are coming and joining two different lines. Okay. Then how many here in this case, how many grids you see two lines are coming together and joining? Only one. But he said, possibly treat minutiae near a grid boundary as if also present in adjacent grid points. Then what are the adjacent grid points for this? So above, side by side, they are taking, right? And just before that also. So you may extend this also to down also. He has shown only the top because the distance is smaller, right, in the top. In this grid, this is towards close to this boundary, upper boundary of that grid. It is meeting, two different lines are meeting here. If you want to reduce how many grids you want to put, so this distance is smaller. Do you agree? This distance is bigger, then you can remove this grid to consider this also has coinciding value, right? Is considering only this grid, right? To be considered as that grid is also two lines are coming and joining. Similarly, he is considering this right side grid, he is not considering this grid. Why?
There's only one line.
Again, distance is very, this is close to this boundary of this grid, right? Boundary of the right boundary of that grid. So only right side point will be considered. So those things will vary, but you can use it, see your knowledge. How many grids? If you take more grids, what happens? It's you need to probe more. Even if they match in this grid, you need to prove whether they are similar or not. Even if you take this one also, you need to prove whether they are similar or not. So if you increase the more number of grids to replicate, then you need to probe more. So this you can take by using minutiae. So applying LSH to fingerprints, fingerprint equal to set of grid squares. No need to min hash since the number of grid squares is not too large. So they are taking only one or two grids, let's say, where different lines are coming and joining. So if you have less number of grids, you don't need to take min hash. Represent each fingerprint by a bit vector with one position for each square. One in only those positions whose square have minutiae. Then you will take each square now. Then you will see that which will be the similar by looking at each square now. One in only those positions whose squares have minutiae. So if you have, suppose, how many grids you have here in this?
Total 20.
16, right? 16, 20 grids you have.
Yes,
Four each row and five each row, four columns, 20. So you will represent only 20. You don't need min hash is saying that. So you represent each fingerprint in 20 columns. Each grid is one column. Then you will have 0 here. This will be represented by, here it is 0, here it is 0, here it is 1, here it is 1, here it is 1, all remaining things zeros. Then another one you take. Then again you see, you will represent like zeros and ones here. Then if they have ones in same grid, then you need to prove them whether they are similar or not further, right? If they don't match this ones, if they don't match ones in any grid, do you need to prove them whether they are similar fingerprints or not? No. So it is reducing that. It see after representing this, then you will take first a grid. Then you will get all the fingerprints which have ones on this grid. Then those are the things which are the pairs you need to prove further. Then again take the second grid like that, third grid like that. So this will help you. You are making smaller sets where you need to prove whether they are similar or not. Smaller sets has very less computation than the bigger set. So if you have 20 divisions, if you make, suppose even if you make equal, suppose if they fall into equal, 100, you have 100 fingerprints. If you want to compare each fingerprint with other, then your complexity is 100 square. Then if you make 20 divisions, each one will get 5, right? Average. If you put all those 20 into 100 into 20 buckets, each one will get 5. Then each grid will need to be probed 5 square, 25. 25 multiplied by 20, how much? Each grid will have only 25 elements, 25 to be probed, right? Then how much 20 multiplied by 25? Compared with 100 square, which one is bigger? If you don't do this process, you need to compute all the pairs, whether they are similar or not, right? So roughly you'll get 100 square pairs, that is one. And if you divide them into like this by using hash maps, of course, it's a similar ones will fall into the similar, that is what we are looking. So if they fall into the same bucket, then only we will see, we'll further prove that whether they are similar or not. Then roughly, if you divide 100 by 20, you'll get 5, right? Each grid, where they map, where they match the ones. So in each grid, how many comparisons you need to make? If it gets 5 ones in each grid, 5 square, right? 25. For 20 grids, you need to do the same thing. So how many you will get total? 20 multiplied by 25 is how much?
500.
500. If you don't do this process, you do each pair and you will probe for each pair. How many you will get? How many pairs you need to probe? 100 square. How much 100 square is?
10,000.
So did you reduce hugely the number of pairs to be probed for similarity? 500 to 10,000? That is 100 you are getting, still it is significant part. If you take 1000 square, then the number of probes you do by using this method will be negligible when you compare that, okay? So that is the advantage of we are reducing the search space for which pairs are similar to be probed. Pick 1024 sets of 3 grid squares, components of the bit vectors randomly. For each set of 3 squares, two prints that each have 1 for all 3 squares or candidate pairs. So he's saying that take pick 1024 sets of 3 grid squares. So 3 grid squares you take, components of the bit vectors randomly. So first you divide the whole grid for fingerprint as 1024. Then you take 3 grid squares. See that all 3 grid squares have the same values. So randomly you pick 3 grid squares. Like signature is how you build signature from the input matrix. He is trying to do the same thing here. For each set of 3 squares, 2 prints that each have 1 for all 3 squares are candidate pairs. Funny sort of bucketization, each set of 3 squares created 1 bucket. So prints can be in many buckets. I just now described even if one grid it is same, then you consider, same means once. You consider them as to be probed for similarity. He's saying that not one, you take 3. Then still pairs which are not similar will become still reduced, right? Falling into the same bucket. Because on 3 grids, it should agree once. So that is what here he says. Further, it will reduce the number of probes for similarity search. Suppose a typical fingerprint, typical fingerprints of minutia in 20% of the grid squares. Suppose fingerprints from the same finger agree in at least 80% of their squares. Is getting into statistics. Probability 2 random fingerprints each have minutia in all 3 squares is 0.2 power 6. So when you take 3, then you will get how many in 64 you'll get? Probability 2 random fingerprints each have minutia in all 3 squares is 0.2 power 6. So this is 0.000064 means in 10 lakhs it is 64.
64 out of million.
64 only you'll find. Why is saying random fingerprints? What is this 0.2? Zero point is the reverse of the 80%, right? He is assuming in the beginning, suppose fingerprints from the same finger agree in at least 80% of the squares you are seeing. So this 20%, they may not agree, right?
Yes.
Then he is taking the 20% and is computing that it's a random. If you take random, they may agree in 20%. So 80% of the times they don't agree. If they agree 20%, then how much of probability you'll get? They will agree in all those three. All 3 squares is 0.2 power 6. So very minimum probability that if you take random means if they are not the same fingerprints, there is probability that they may fall into the same bucket, but that probability is very less. Probability two fingerprints from the same finger each have ones in 3 given squares is 0.2 multiplied by 0.8 whole cube this is, and that is 0.004096. Probability for at least one of 1024 sets of 3 points. So because you are not verifying only on 3 grids, then you are taking 1024 sets of 3 points. So 1 minus 0 point, because on all it is not agreeing. Any of 3 you take out of 1024 3 combinations, the probability is 0.985. So if you have 80% similarity between 2 fingerprints of the same finger, then if you take 1024 sets of 3 grids, the probability that they fall into the same group or same bucket is 0.985. Means for 1,985 times you get the accurate result. 1.5% false negatives may happen. So remaining things, whatever will come, that 0.15 means 15, you may get false negatives. But for random fingerprints, this is 1 minus, just now we computed this 0.20 is the random thing. So 0.63, 6.3 false positives you will get. So random fingerprints to be considered as to be proved for similarity is only 6.3%. And you may miss 1.5%. If you use this method, 15 you may miss, even though they are similar, but they may not come into the same bucket. Means those 15% are 15 out of 1,000. That is nothing but 1.5% false negatives are happening. Even though they are not similar, they are falling into the same bucket is 6.3%. So 63 out of 1,000 you may get, though they are not similar, but they are falling into the same bucket. Means 63 will be wasted, right, for your computation.
Yes.
So this 15% you will lose. If that is sensitive, I don't want to lose even one, right? If they want to fingerprint matching with the criminals, and if they are to be executed, then this algorithm will not work there. Because you can leave out a person in criminal justice. You cannot punish an innocent. Even though you miss punishing a real criminal. You understand the difference there? So if you punish there, it's if you use this type of algorithms, that 15% also they don't agree. So if they consider this 985, if it is reward, then it is okay. 15% worth people are removed. But if it is punishment, then they don't agree for this, right? I need 100% accurate that they did this crime. So it depends on what problem and in which situation we are providing these solutions, whether these solutions will be useful for them or not. That also we need to think. So these false negatives is okay when you are giving rewards. Means 15% or 1.5% of the people who are worth to receive the awards, if they don't receive the award, it's okay. But if it is punishment, suppose, though the punishment is correct 98.5%, but 1.5% times people are getting punishment without doing crime. That is not acceptable for justice system. There, these types of algorithms will not work. So we should also see that when we are designing algorithm, whether it works or not. You understand the difference where these algorithms will work, will not work?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So that also we should keep first, because their first principle is an innocent person shouldn't be penalized or punished for the crime which he did not do. Even though in that case, some of the real criminals may miss this punishment, okay. particularly when this executions are there, highest punishment, capital punishment. That's why there are many checks. Even the judges deliver the statement as a capital punishment. Again, that goes to the cabinet where humans will sit and think of it. Say, then it goes to the president, whether he can be pardoned, all those things, because that capital punishment is the highest thing where you cannot get life back. So many checks here also. It's if you provide an algorithm, then many checks should be there for such things. Okay, we will get into this general analysis of this hash functions. Hash functions decide equality. There is a subtlety about what a hash function really is in the context of LSH families. So we are using hashing in LSH. Then hash function H really takes two elements X and Y and returns a decision whether X and Y are candidates for comparison. We are not saying that if they fall into the same bucket, they are same. We are saying that that pair to be probed further. That means they are candidates to be checked whether they are similar or not. Example, the family of min hash functions computes min hash values and says yes if and only if they are the same. Shorthand hx equal to hy means H says yes for pair of elements X and Y. Means they are to be probed further to be equality. Suppose we have a space S of points with a distance measure D. So if you have points, then the similarity we measure in terms of the distance. If that distance measure is D, a family H of hash functions is said to be D1, D2, P1, P2 sensitive if for any X and Y in S, the distance between X and Y less than or equal to D1, then the probability over all H in H that Hx equal to Hy is at least P1. So whenever you get distance less than or equal to D1, for all such pairs, your hash function should get same. The probability is P1. Though distance is small, what is probability that they differ here? 1 minus P1. Similarly, dxy greater than or equal to D2. If distance is more than this, then the probability over all H in H that Hx equal to Hy is at most P2. So if they differ, this is the maximum. If they differ that, the H value or hash value is same, the probability is just maximum P2. So you may say that it's saying if the distance is less than 1, suppose if it is Euclidean distance, you may say that there is 80% probability that both values will be hashed to the both points or both objects are hashed to the same value is 80%. Then you may also say the second one says that if the distance is more than 3, less than 1 we already talked about. But if the distance is more than 3, then the probability that both will go to the same hash value is something like 2%. Means negligible that, like in earlier case, we have seen 1.5%, right? So like that, this should be negligible, this P2, P1 should be very high value for us. So such distances we need to find out, such as functions also. So here pictorially is given less than D1, high probability at least P1. Then if it is greater than D2, low probability at most P2. Then what happens in the middle? Then high probability you can take as it is because there is high probability that they are similar. Anyway, they no need to probe much. If you get 99%, let's say, if they are similar, then no need to probe much. And if they are only 1% or 0.5%, they no need to worry about them. So the worry is between D1 and D2. So what percentage will come in the middle? So let S equal to sets, D equal to Jacob distance. H is formed from the min hash functions for all permutations. Then probability of Hx equal to Hy is 1 minus Dxy. So Jacob, if you take the Jacob distance, so if you use this min hash, you remember what is min hash? The bands, signatures and bands, that is min hash, let's say, which we discussed yesterday. If you use that, then the probability of Hx equal to Hy equal to 1 minus Dxy. It depends on the distance if you use the Jacob distance. Restates theorem about Jacob similarity and min hashing in terms of Jacob distance. So claim H is a 1 by 3, 2 by 3, 2 by 3, 1 by 3. So 1 by 3 is the distance D1, 2 by 3 is D2, 2 by 3 is probability P1, 1 by 3 is probability P2. He is trying to put in this setup D1, D2, P1, P2 sensitive. Sensitive family for S and D. If distance less than or equal to 1 by 3, then similarity is greater than or equal to 2 by 3. Then probability that min hash values agree is greater than or equal to 2 by 3. That is the first. If it less than 1 by 3, there is probability that 2 by 3 times they agree. If the distance is more than 2 by 3, the probability of agreeing is less than 1 by 3. This is the lower bound, this is the upper bound. So more than 2 by 3 means always probability agreeing. If they are less than 1 by 3 is more than 2 by 3, means 2 by 3 is a lower bound. Maximum they agree only 1 by 3 means 1 by 3 will become an upper bound. For Jacob similarity, min hashing gives us a D1, D2, 1 minus D1, 1 minus D2 sensitive family for any D1 less than D2. So 1 minus D1 itself is becoming a probability, right? Then if you want more probability to be agreed, you need to reduce the D1, okay? And when they are falling to contain the false positives, then you need to increase the D2. Amplifying a LSH family, the bands technique we learned for signature matrices carries over to this more general setting goal. The S-curve effect seen there. How many bands we discussed last time, right? How many bands should be taken? For that is bringing this S-curve technique. The S-curve effect seen there and construction like rows in a band or construction like many bands. So given family H, construct family H prime, whose members each consist of R functions from H. So for H equal to H1, HR and H prime, Hx equal to Hy, if and only if Hix equal to Hiy for all I. So theorem, if H is D1, D2, P1, P2 sensitive, then H prime is D1, D2, P1 power R, P2 power R sensitive. So he's trying to get some mathematical proof for that. So we will not discuss much about that now. That you can go through the video and put that. Then final result we'll see what will we get. So if you fix a probability, transforms a 0.2, 0.8, 0.8 and 0.2 sensitive family into a 2, 0.2, 0.8, 0.87, 85, 0.0064 sensitive family. So what is where is the probability between these two? You are getting that similarity is 0.8785. And if they are not within that distance, more than that distance, still there is probability that 0.0064 will come. But where is the remaining probability? That is in the middle, right? Between D1, D2
Between
distance,
D1 and
there is
D2.
middle. So that is the thing where we get this. Apply the 4,4R and For each S curve, 1 minus P power R power B. This is your band's number B and probability. Probability is directly dependent on your distance, how much of distance you put. There is a threshold T for which 1 minus T power R B equal to T. So above T, high probabilities are increased. Below T, they are decreased. So R is fixed number of rows, right? This you don't need to optimize this R because you don't have any control. R is your number of signature rows. So only B you can control. So B you can control by solving this equation. So you fix T so that above T, high probabilities are increased. If you take more T, then high probabilities are increased. Below T, they are decreased. Means to be coincide or same documents or same sets. You improve the sensitivity as long as the low probability is less than T and the high probability is greater than T. Iterates as you like. So you again go through this once again. You should be more interested how to fix this B. So it's bringing up a mathematical formula to derive this B based on user input T. So if you want more probabilities to be fall into the same bucket, you need to increase T. If it's okay, right? Because that is also otherwise decreasing the or may get more false negatives. So that trade-off should be taken care. So above T, high probabilities are increased. Below T, they are decreased. So if you take less T, then you'll get less probability. That middle value, whatever you have 3 bands there, right? 3 different sections. So that middle value, how much you can ignore, that is important. Or how much you are ready to prove. Because first one, anyway, you will accept, last one you will discard. What about in the middle? So if you increase T, then middle value will become less, but more you will ignore. If you decrease the T, then more you need to probe that middle section. So improve the sensitivity as long as the low probability is less than T and the high probability is greater than T. So here pictorially it is given. So probability is lowered, becomes like this. This is the threshold, probability is raised. So if you raise the probability, then you'll include more false positives also. If you decrease the probability, then let's say you will miss more negatives also. So this is what the discussion about the how similar documents or similar sets or similar records to be find out. So I once again tell you that I have made it faster because there is more mathematics statistics involved. You need to put more time to understand that. Go through your videos. If you don't understand, you can request some time, then I'll also help you to understand if you're really interested to understand that. But finally, you need to understand that equation, how to fix B. Like in cluster numbers, we'll take the elbow curve, right? Here he talks about the S curve. So use that S curve to fix B based on our your T. So that is the main gist. You need to understand how to fix those number of bands for locality sensitive hashing when you use min hashing. So we also need to finish today module 7. This is the small module. Already we discussed in data mining these distance measures. Yeah, any questions? Somebody is saying something. So in distance measures, generalized LSH is based on some kind of distance because finally we converted that into a distance, right, to get the probabilities between points. Similar points are close. So Jaccard similarity is not a distance. 1 minus Jaccard similarity is 2, is a distance. Because when we say it is similar, then how much they are dissimilar, that is the distance. So 2 major classes of distance measures are Euclidean, non-Euclidean. Again, this is mathematical concept. So there are 2 types of distances. One is Euclidean, other one is non-Euclidean. They follow different characteristics. A Euclidean space has some number of real valued dimensions and dense points. There is a notion of average of 2 points. If it is a Euclidean distance, you can find the average of 2 points. Just add up them and divide by that. A Euclidean distance is based on the locations of points in such a space. So there is another measure for distance that is non-Euclidean. Any other space is non-Euclidean where you cannot find averages, where it is not based on locations on a space. That is called non-Euclidean. Distance measures for a non-Euclidean space are based on properties of points, but not their location in a space. So if you see the records, there is nothing like a space, then you can actually put them on a space, the points locate. So they are something, whether address match 1, the 3 values you will take. Address match is same, name is same, like that. It is not, there is no distance between 2 different addresses are given, how much they differ. In Euclidean, you can say that one is at 5, other one is at 7, the difference is 2. Whether in a non-Euclidean, you cannot say the difference between 2 points. You can only say that they differ or they don't differ. If they differ, how many dimensions they differ, like that. Then there is no question of finding averages, average distance between them. So those measures are called non-Euclidean. Still you can measure distance out of 3, 2 match or something like that, but that is not equivalent to average. Whatever distance you get, you define that distance. You can also define your own customized thing based on your dimensions, but that should follow these properties if that to be considered as a distance measure. What are the properties? D is a distance measure if it is a function from pairs of points to real numbers, such that, first of all, always distance should be greater than or equal to 0. Distance should be equal to 0 only if both are same elements. And distance is commutative, whether you compute from x to y distance or y to x distance, you should get the same. And this is called triangle inequality, dxy less than or equal to dxz plus dzy. So if you take any other element, the distance from x to that other element, from other element to y, when you add up, that is always to be more than the xy. Means the direct distance is always smaller than via distance. Z is via point, right? To go to y, you go via z. Means first you reach from x to z, then from z to y, then still you reach y. But the distance should be always more than the direct distance. That is the triangle inequality. Then L2 norm we have defined in data mining already. Square root of the sum of the squares of the differences between x and y in each dimension. So under square root of in each dimension, what is their difference? Make square. Sum, then take the square root. That is the L2 norm. The most common notion of distance. L1 norm is simply modular distance. In each dimension, how much they differ, add them. Sum of the differences in each dimension. Manhattan distance if you had a travel along coordinates only. In which distance, in which coordinate you get the maximum distance, that is the Manhattan distance, which we defined already in data mining. Examples of Euclidean distances here it is given, 2 points are taken, 5, 5 and 9, 8. So L2 norm is the differences between this. 9 minus 5 is 4, 8 minus 5 is 3, square them, 4 square plus 3 square, take the square root. Then L2 norm is 5. L1 norm is just a modular distance. 9 minus 5 is 4, 8 minus 5 is 3, they just add them, 4 plus 3 is 7. So you also have the L infinity norm, dxy, the maximum of the differences between x and y in any dimension. The maximum is the limit as r goes to infinity of the LR norm, what you get by taking the rth power of the differences, summing and taking the rth root. So you can increase L1, L2, L3, L2, square all the differences in each dimension, L3 cube the, like that. LR will be R times you make the power. R tends to infinity, it becomes the simply L infinity now. So non-Euclidean distances, which we consider is Jaccard distance for sets 1 minus Jaccard similarity. So you know what is Jaccard similarity? It is the number of common points by number of total unique points together in both sets. That is the Jaccard similarity. If you take 1 minus Jaccard similarity, you'll get the Jaccard distance. Cosine distance is for vectors. Angle between the vectors is cosine distance. Then edit distance, this is important for us. Edit distance for strings equal to number of inserts and deletes to change one string into another. Usually it's when they are trying to find out how your spell correction will work. Have you seen any time in any editor, they will give you spell suggestions, right? Spelling suggestions for words. How does it work? Did you think anybody, any time like that? How does it work? What editors you use to type letters or whatever that it's a write a document?
Google Docs.
Google Docs. Will it suggest you when you are typing? Your
If you
word
made any mistake, it will suggest, sir.
is suggest with alternatives.
Yes, sir.
How does it tell us? How does it suggest? Most of the times that uses the edit distance. So it will get the dictionary words by changing your whatever you type it, right? That is not in the dictionary. Then how many deletes or how many additions you need to make to get to that dictionary. So which will have less number of alterations from your typed word closest to the dictionary that brings. So that usually uses this edit distance. Edit distance for strings is number of inserts and deletes to change one string into another. So if you take, suppose, she and e, both are dictionary words, it won't give any suggestions. But if you write something like BHE, then to get to SHE, then what is the edit distance for that? How many inserts, how many deletes you need to make from okay, I'll write, he is anyway dictionary word, right? So if you take STE, then what suggestion you may get from the dictionary? It should go and find out in dictionary what is the closest word by inserting only one element. It may give you stem, right? STEM, something like. Or it also will give you some other idea. If you remove T, then you will get SE. That is not a dictionary word. You need to remove T and you need to add H. So to suggest SHE, what is the edit distance for that? STE to SHE? One deletion and one insertion. So the distance will become 2. If you take STEM, STEM, suppose STEM is a dictionary word. What is the edit distance between STE to STEM?
Only one.
1. So it will mostly suggest STEM instead of the SHE. So edit distance for strings, number of inserts and deletes to change one string into another. Hamming distance for bit vectors, the number of positions in which they differ. It's okay. You have all vectors zeros and ones. Then how many dimensions you differ for that vector? That is the Hamming distance. So Jaccard distance we know how to compute. This is finding Jaccard distance between two sets. This we know. Jaccard distance is a distance measure, is proving that. So always between two different sets, you never get a distance less than 0 because you are taking only dimensions, number of elements common, maximum is 0, you say number of elements. So you'll never get less than 0. And if both sets are same, you'll get 0. And whether you compute dxy, dyx in whatever direction, it is same. And if you take some other set, dxy less than or equal to dxz plus dzy, trickier. Next slide is proving that by using mathematics. Then anyway, you do this mathematics. We don't have that much time now. basically is trying to prove that this triangle inequality is also satisfied by the Jaccard distance. So cosine distance is you know that A dot B equal to AB cos theta equal to A dot B by mod A mod B. That is cosine distance, which we discussed already in data mining. So cosine measure diagram it also proves that cosine distance is also a measure. So even edit distance also satisfies those properties, those 4 properties. So he's giving one example here to compute the edit distance: x equal to ABCDE, y equal to BC DU VE. Turn x into y by deleting A, then inserting U and V after D. So what is edit distance between ABCD and BC DU VE? 3.
3.
Or LCS XY equal to BCDE. So what is the least common string is same in both? By deleting. BCD. That is what least common string in the same order. XY is BCD. So note mod x plus mod y equal mod y minus 2 of LCS XY equal to 3. So 3 is the edit distance. So edit distance you don't need to compute each time. How many, see, by looking like this, see, I need to delete B, then add U, then add V. So this is one way, but this is not possible. That's why he's giving, get the LCS of XY, least common string. Okay. Then this is simply mod x plus mod y minus 2 times of LCS XY is your edit distance. Edit distance is also a measure. I want you to get some experience of, because this is mostly used in our data science, this LCD. So if I take some U also here between C and D, then how do you compute edit distance here? Compute and tell me. First, what to be computed to get the edit distance? Last formula.
LCS.
LCS. So what is LCS if you put between C and D, U?
BC.
Okay, BC, because D is coming after U, so this is gone, but BC, U is common, right? You can remove some of the, but in the same order you need to see. You will BC, U, here in the second one, D you will remove, right? BC, U.
BC UE.
BC UE as well.
BC, U, E. So what is the edit distance now? You got LCS is the 4 again. So mod x equal to, this will change now. This is 6 right now.
6.
6 plus 6 plus this is same.
6 plus 6 minus 8.
6 plus 6 minus 8.
4.
4. See whether you can get there by using only 4 deletes or inserts. You'll get from here to here. That is what you need to verify here. So A to be added, that is 1, right? Addition. To convert ABCD to this, A to be removed, sorry. So A to be removed, 1. Then D to be added before U.
Yes.
And D to be removed.
V to be added.
V to be added.
With 4, we are able to transform this to this, right? 4 deletes or inserts. So to get the edit distance, you need to get LCS. Now you need to write an algorithm. How do you find this LCS, right? So once you get the LCS, then you will get the edit distance. So he is proving that this is also a valid distance. It satisfies those four properties. Then Hamming distance, how many it will differ, right? Is the number of positions in which bit vectors differ. So here 1, 1 is common, 0, 0 is common, 1, 0 is differing 1, and 0, 1 is differing 2, and 1, 1 is common. So 2 places it is differing, right? P1 and P2. Third
Yes,
position
sir.
and fourth position. So that is the Hamming distance. Hamming distance also satisfies our distance metric properties. So once you get this, we don't discuss much about this because we know what is nearest neighbors, but in massive data sets, what are the problems we will get? He hasn't discussed much, but I'll give you that idea and I'll start. So what is nearest neighbors, you know, supervisor learning this is, would like to do prediction, estimate a function fx so that y equal to fx. So you need to get nearest neighbors and get what is the dominant character of nearest neighbors or dominant class in nearest neighbors, that class you will give. So would like to do prediction, estimate a function fx so that y equal to fx. Y is the class label, where y can be, of course, he is also extending this to regression. In regression, what they do is they get the nearest neighbors. If they are values, average of those nearest neighbors is the regressed value. That is the nearest neighbor regression. Means what I do is, if I need to predict, I don't know the marks what a student got, then with the similar characters, 3 students, if 3 nearest neighbor, if I use, then I'll take the 3 similar students, means with the same background, with the other subjects, they have the same marks. Then in that particular where the marks are missing, I need to get a value for that. Then I'll take average value of those 3 nearest neighbors, value for this, for which I'm computing. That is the regression technique they use in nearest neighbors. You understand what I'm talking about, nearest neighbor regression? If it is a class, they will take the dominant class. If it is to be derived a value, what value they take from nearest neighbors? Average. So complex object, ranking of items, sparse trees, etc. Here training set and test set. Estimate y equal to fx on xy. Hope that the same fx also works on unseen xy. Okay. Data is labeled, have many pairs xy, x vector of binary is actually putting the entire machine learning setup here. So we will talk about the following methods. K nearest neighbors. Of course, we don't do in this lecture support vector machines and decision trees. That will come later, but we concentrate on K nearest neighbors. Main question, how to efficiently train. So this is also called instance-based learning. Nearest neighbor, keep the whole training data set, XY. A query example Q comes, find closest examples, example X star, predict Y star. So works both for regression and classification. In collaborative filtering is an example of KNN classifier. Find K most similar people to user X that have rated movie Y. Then predict rating YX of X as an average of YK. So if you want to predict what rating the user can give, first get K nearest neighbor users. That is nothing but K similar users to that X, closest similar users to that X. Then take the average rating what they gave. We assume that this person also will give average rating, close to average rating. So one nearest neighbor is this. We will take only one. Then K nearest neighbors. If you use K nearest neighbors, again, weighting function you can take. The closest neighbor will contribute more. Farthest neighbor will contribute less. That is again optional. So how to fit with the local point? Just predict the average output among K nearest neighbors if you don't use the weightage. So you can also use kernel regression, distance metric Euclidean, how many neighbors to look at, all of them, you take all. then weighting function equal to exponential of minus dx. So if they are farther, then their contribution is less. If they are closer, their contribution is more. So nearby points to query Q are weighted more strongly based on your kernel width. The kernel width is that. So how to find nearest neighbors? Given a set P of n points in RD, the whole question is finding nearest neighbors. Once you find the nearest neighbors, predicting the class or regressing value is easy. So given a query point Q, find the nearest neighbor P of Q in P. Range search, find all points in P within a distance R from Q. That is the range search, let's say. If you fix a distance, simply you can get all the points which are inside of the distance. But if you don't want to use this range search, so in big data, you can never get the distances from the point to all other points. That is not possible. Earlier, we were taking distance between the point and all other points. Then we were deciding which point, which 3 points or which k points are closer. What is the problem with when the data is massive to do that?
You have to calculate distance between that point and all the other points in the data set.
In each prediction, if you have billion points, then billion distances you need to find out, right? Which is not practically possible. For that, a simple solution is, instead of taking k, you can take a distance. Okay, within this distance, whatever is there, I consider them as nearest neighbors. Then do whatever dominant class or regression. Or use locality sensitive is simply giving this idea and closing this. So how do you use this locality sensitive to find the nearest neighbors? If it is the Euclidean distance, you can't do much. Then you can take this, let's say, distances. If it is not Euclidean distance, you cannot even take this distance, right? Within one distance, within two distance, because there is no meaning there much. So how do you use localities? There, the similar item concept will come, right? You're looking whether they are agreeing or not, right? On different fields.
Yes, we need to check if two records are how similar two records are.
So you need to find the similar
features.
to be for what you are going to predict class or you are going to predict regression. So you need to get the similar items. This is nothing but a problem of finding similar items to the given item. So whatever we developed this locality sensitive hashing, that will work here in a massive data sets. The earlier things will not work. Again, it's you will hash them, all the points. So which are similar, they fall into the same group. Only those groups you will verify with this, right? When you ask the new point, in which bucket it falls, only those bucket points to be considered as a neighbor points. You understand what I'm saying? A new point comes, then what do you do? For that, you need to predict, right? What are the nearest neighbors first? You need to compute what are the nearest neighbors. So you already build your hash functions and you bucket all existing points for which you know the result. If a new point comes, then what do you do?
We hash it and
Hash it.
whichever bucket it
Right.
falls into, we consider only those points.
Those points to be computed, which is nearest one. Okay. So that is the idea we will use here. So this completes the discussion of LSH. Of course, he is discussing more on later in your edX course. So it's more mathematical again. If you are interested, again, go through them. After going through, first you concentrate on ideas, concepts, then the formulas, what they are using. The last thing is you should concentrate, provided if you are going for research or if you are going to develop your own algorithms, then understand those mathematics and statistics. So what level of knowledge you want, based on that, these are the steps. So I am not concentrating on mathematics because of the time, but if you are interested, Then you can go through that, you can write notes, then we can have that discussion with one-on-one, or if somebody want to join, let them join. So provided if you are more interested in research and developing your own algorithms, then these ideas will be useful, these mathematical ideas, how they got this idea, how they proved those things. That we can also do during practicum also. So I'll stop it here. Any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we will continue with Bala Bhavana presentation. This discussion is over. If somebody want to work on their project, that is up to them. They can leave, or they can also see their demo, and they may also get some ideas how to implement. That is up to you, it seems. So officially, this discussion session I'm closing at 4:38. Then another 10 minutes, I think 10-15 minutes, Bala Bhavana team will give that demo, what they did for page ranking. Is that okay? Okay. So Bala Bhavana, you can continue.
Yes, sir. Jaiprakash, would you like to share your screen?
Sir, please use screen sharing permissions.
Yeah, I did. Thank you.
Bhavana, you can start.
So, good evening, sir. So our team has done a project on page ranking algorithm for our website. So our teammates are Jaiprakash, Fanindra, and Tarun. So as of now, we have implemented